New York, San Francisco, and Miami were once the American vacation trifecta. Now viral clips show eerily quiet sidewalks and beach cams panning over empty loungers. What changed? Value, safety perceptions, and the climate itself. Start with the bill. Manhattan hotel prices surged to an average daily rate around $421 in late 2024 before fees, before cocktails putting a weekend in NYC in the same price band as a budget hop to Europe. Would you still go if the room alone ate your budget? Across the country, San Francisco's rooms are cheaper than Manhattan, but still not cheap, with 2025 rates projected near $233 as the city works back from a bruised brand. You've seen those empty downtown videos. Are they just a camera angle, or proof travelers are choosing somewhere that feels safer and better value? Miami complicates the story. Overall, tourism hit records, yet on the ground experience can sour fast. Spring break crackdowns, curfews, $100 parking, heavy policing, deliberately thinned crowds. Layer on a record sargassum forecast that leaves beaches smelling like rotten eggs, and would you push your trip to shoulder season or skip it? And even where demand is strong, New York officials have trimmed 2025 visitor forecasts and flagged weaker international arrivals. Is this a blip or the start of Americans voting with their feet and wallets? What happens when three of America's most iconic tourist magnets, New York, San Francisco, and Miami, start showing cracks in their allure? For decades, these cities symbolized energy, culture, and escape. Today, warning signs are piling up, and visitors are asking themselves a harder question. Is the experience still worth the cost and risk? Let's start with New York. Once the city where every traveler wanted a selfie in Times Square, the financial reality has changed. An average hotel stay now crosses the $400 mark per night before fees. Add meals, transportation, and attractions. And suddenly, your affordable long weekend rivals the cost of flying to Europe. That imbalance makes tourists question loyalty. Would you rather spend 3 nights in Midtown or 5 nights in Lisbon? San Francisco tells a different but equally troubling story. Its downtown is still recovering from pandemic emptiness, with convention attendance lagging and office towers half-filled. Visitors notice, and perception becomes reality. A city of tech dreams now portrayed in viral clips as a ghost town with safety concerns. Even if some areas remain vibrant, brand damage lingers. If you were planning a California trip, would you risk paying high rates for a city the internet paints as unsafe? Then there is Miami, still busy on paper but under stress. In 2025, city leaders actively pushed tourists away during peak weeks, introducing curfews, heavier policing, and sky-high parking fees to control spring break chaos. Beaches increasingly battle sargassum seaweed, leaving stretches unappealing at exactly the time hotels and airlines raise prices. The irony: a city once defined by carefree beach glamour is now forcing visitors to ask if the sun and nightlife justify the headaches. These 3 case studies reveal the same pattern: rising costs colliding with fragile perceptions of value and safety. Tourists no longer view a vacation as guaranteed joy, they weigh trade-offs. A New York rooftop view competes with European castles, San Francisco competes with Austin or Seattle, and Miami competes with the Caribbean. So here is the central question of this story. Are America's flagship cities pricing and policing themselves out of the very market they once dominated? And more importantly, what does that mean for travelers like you who are deciding where to spend limited time and money? To understand why New York, San Francisco, and Miami are cooling as tourist destinations, we need to dig beneath headlines and into hard data. These cities are still famous, but the numbers reveal a more complex reality, one shaped by cost of living surges, safety concerns, and climate disruptions. Take New York first. According to industry trackers like STR Global, the average daily hotel rate in Manhattan recently hit around $421, one of the highest in the nation. That's before adding resort fees, cleaning charges, and taxes that can tack on 20% more. Compare that to the national average hotel price of roughly $160, and the scale of the problem becomes clear. Tourists planning a family vacation quickly see the math spiral. 3 nights in New York can easily exceed $1,500 just for the room. Add dining, where the average entree now runs $30 to $50 in mid-tier restaurants and Broadway tickets, often topping $150 each, and even a modest trip for 2 rivals the cost of an international flight. So here's the dilemma. Would you pay Paris-level prices for a trip where your main view might be construction scaffolding in Times Square? San Francisco's numbers are also telling, though in a different way. Hotel rates average around $233 per night. Not outrageous compared to New York, but occupancy rates remain weak. Placer.ai data shows foot traffic in Union Square down more than 25% from 2019 levels. Transit ridership is stuck at about half of pre-pandemic figures. That emptiness feeds perceptions of danger. Viral videos of open-air drug use, break-ins, and empty malls circulate widely on social media. Even if crime statistics show only modest increases in certain categories, perception outweighs nuance. Imagine yourself booking a $250 hotel downtown, only to walk past shuttered stores and encampments. Would you feel safe recommending that trip to your family? Miami's case is more climate-driven. NOAA reports predict above-average sargassum seaweed blooms for 2025, blanketing beaches with brown, foul-smelling piles that deter swimmers and sunbathers. In 2023, parts of Miami Beach spent millions clearing seaweed daily, but complaints still flooded social media. Add to this the aggressive crackdown on spring break tourism. The city imposed curfews, hiked parking fees to $100, and rolled out heavy police presence to deter party crowds. For some locals, this was relief. For tourists, it was a shock. The numbers back it up. March occupancy fell, despite overall record arrivals in Florida. Here's the question. When a city deliberately tells certain travelers, "Don't come," does it risk losing others too? Historical comparisons sharpen the story. In 2019, international visitors flocked to New York, accounting for over 13 million of its 66 million total tourists. But post-pandemic recovery stalled. By 2025, projections show visitor counts still lagging by millions compared to the pre-2020 peak. San Francisco faced a similar struggle. International arrivals were cut nearly in half after the pandemic and have yet to rebound fully. Miami bucked the trend during early reopenings, capitalizing on looser restrictions, but even there, growth is uneven. Domestic arrivals are strong, yet repeat visitors express lower satisfaction in surveys, citing costs and beach conditions. Let's zoom into the cost of living angle, because tourists feel it most vividly in food and flights. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that food away from home inflation has averaged 6% annually since 2021. A meal for two in San Francisco can exceed $120 with tax and tip, cheaper than New York, but still a burden. Airfares compound the issue. Domestic ticket prices jumped nearly 20% in 2022, 2023, and while they eased slightly in 2024, popular hubs like JFK, SFO, and MIA remain among the most expensive. For many Americans, it's simply cheaper to fly to Cancun or Lisbon than to cross the country. Isn't it ironic that international travel is often the budget choice compared to staying domestic? Personal stories underline the data. A California couple shared online that their recent trip to New York cost $4,500 for 5 days hotel, meals, and tickets excluding flights. For that money, they wrote, "We could have spent 2 weeks in Portugal." Another traveler recounted being evicted from a Miami Beach Airbnb after noise complaints from neighbors frustrated with tourist turnover. On forums, recurring themes appear: high costs, low value, and frustration with services compared to expectations. Have you had a similar moment where you asked yourself mid-trip, "Why did I spend this much?" Even weather plays into the evidence. NOAA heat maps show that summer 2024 brought record-breaking heat waves across the East Coast and South Florida, sending feels-like temperatures above 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Tourists complained online of sweltering sidewalks in Manhattan and unbearable humidity in Miami. San Francisco's issue was the opposite. Unpredictable foggy summers left some visitors unprepared, joking they needed winter coats in July. Climate volatility makes trips riskier. Imagine saving for a dream vacation only to spend half of it indoors, escaping extreme weather. Put all these data points together and the story is undeniable. America's flagship cities are losing their shine because the value equation is broken. Tourists are paying more, but often getting less comfort, less safety, less predictability. Numbers confirm the trend, but so do the stories that go viral. TikTok clips of empty San Francisco streets, Instagram reels of Miami seaweed, choked beaches, YouTube vlogs comparing New York hotel rooms to shoeboxes with $500 price tags. So here's a question for you. When the numbers and the narratives align, is that when decline becomes real? Or can marketing and nostalgia still convince millions to return? When you peel back the layers of New York, San Francisco, and Miami's tourism struggles, you find the same threads woven through rising living costs, safety anxieties, and climate realities. But behind those headlines are deeper systemic forces that reveal why recovery has been fragile and why the problems might not go away anytime soon. Start with cost of living. Inflation hit every American household, but in these cities, the effect is magnified. Hotel operators argue that wage hikes for service workers, skyrocketing commercial rents, and utility bills leave them no choice but to raise prices. The result? Travelers end up paying not just for the room, but for the privilege of helping hotels offset urban costs. Restaurants tell a similar story. A plate of pasta in San Francisco costs $28 not because flour got more expensive, but because the chef's rent doubled. Here's the paradox. When everyday locals can barely afford to live in these cities, why should we expect tourists to find them affordable? Then comes safety. Officials in New York and San Francisco insist crime rates are stable or even improving. Yet the lived reality on sidewalks, visible homelessness, petty theft, empty storefronts fuels unease. In San Francisco especially, the remote work shift hollowed out downtown. Tech firms left towers half empty, meaning fewer office workers, fewer eyes on the street, and fewer reasons for restaurants and shops to stay open. That emptiness is what tourists see when they wander into Union Square at 9 p.m. Even if the statistics say otherwise, perception has already shaped reputation. Do you trust the numbers? Or your gut when walking down a deserted block? Miami's behind-the-scenes story is more about governance and environment. The spring break crackdown was not random. It was a deliberate choice by city leaders to reduce rowdy crowds, protect residents, and rebrand the city as more upscale. But in doing so, Miami risked alienating a generation of younger travelers. Add to that the environmental challenge. Sargassum seaweed is not just an eyesore, but a byproduct of warming oceans and fertilizer runoff. Clearing it costs millions, and still the problem returns every year. That's not mismanagement, that's climate reality knocking on the city's door. Another hidden driver is competition. In the past, these three cities faced little challenge. They were the default American icons. But now, secondary cities like Nashville, Austin, Denver, and even international destinations are aggressively marketing themselves. Cheaper flights, lower hotel rates, safer reputations all appeal to travelers who feel priced out of traditional hubs. If you could see a live band in Austin for half the price of dinner in Manhattan, where would you go? Ultimately, the backdrop is a mismatch between image and infrastructure. These cities still advertise glamour, but the machinery behind the scenes, housing markets in crisis, underfunded transit, climate stress, public safety debates cannot keep up. And that gap widens each year. Tourists might forgive one bad meal or one expensive hotel bill, but when the entire trip feels like a compromise, the damage is lasting. So the deeper question emerges. Are these cities facing a temporary stumble, or are they exposing a structural weakness that will redefine American tourism for the next decade? The unraveling of tourism in New York, San Francisco, and Miami doesn't just affect hotels and tour guides. The consequences ripple outward into housing markets, local economies, and even the cultural image of America abroad. Let's map the fallout and then look ahead at what the future might hold. In New York, fewer tourists mean billions lost in tax revenue. Before the pandemic, international travelers alone spent more than $28 billion annually in the city. Today, visitor counts remain below peak, and that missing money affects everything from subway maintenance to public school budgets. Restaurants and Broadway theaters feel it first: empty seats, shorter runs, and layoffs. If you've ever wondered why ticket prices seem higher than ever, part of the answer is simple: fewer tourists subsidizing the system. San Francisco faces a different consequence: perception driving economic decline. Tourism was one of the few lifelines offsetting the tech exodus. Without robust visitor spending, downtown remains half empty, retail collapses, and office-to-housing conversions stall. Local homeowners suffer too. Zillow data shows values in key neighborhoods dipping as demand falls, and fewer visitors mean less interest from out-of-town buyers who once dreamed of a pied-à-terre near the Golden Gate. Ask yourself, would you invest in a condo if you weren't even sure the city could attract tourists anymore? Miami's fallout is climatic and generational. If young travelers feel pushed away, the city risks losing the very demographic that feeds its nightlife and cultural cachet. That creates a long-term branding issue. Miami could morph from party capital to exclusive enclave, narrowing its audience but also limiting growth. At the same time, climate-driven issues like rising seas and invasive seaweed blooms threaten to physically reshape the coastline. If the beaches themselves lose appeal, can Miami sustain tourism on nightlife alone? Now let's project forward. In the pessimistic scenario, costs continue climbing, safety perceptions worsen, and climate pressures intensify. In this case, New York loses international dominance to cheaper European capitals, San Francisco becomes a cautionary tale of urban decline, and Miami evolves into a niche luxury market. The neutral scenario sees modest recovery. Inflation stabilizes, local governments invest in safety and infrastructure, and marketing campaigns successfully rebrand these cities. Visitor numbers rebound to 80-90% of pre-pandemic levels, but growth is uneven. Travelers remain selective, focusing on shorter stays and curated experiences. In the optimistic scenario, reform and innovation take hold. New York cracks down on hidden fees and restores visitor trust. San Francisco repurposes empty offices into vibrant mixed-use districts, and Miami harnesses environmental innovation to mitigate seaweed and rising seas. If these efforts succeed, all three cities could reclaim their places as global icons, albeit with higher barriers to entry and narrower margins. The truth probably lies between these extremes. The next 2 to 3 years will be decisive. The choices made by city leaders, the resilience of local businesses, and the shifting priorities of travelers will determine whether these destinations recover or redefine themselves entirely. But here's the question for you. As a traveler with limited time and money, do you wait for these cities to fix themselves, or do you move on to fresher, cheaper alternatives? Now, let's bring this closer to home, because this story isn't just about numbers on a chart, it's about decisions you might make this year. Imagine you've been saving for a dream trip. You scroll through hotel options in New York, and every choice feels like a mortgage payment. Would you still book? Or would you pivot to a cheaper flight to Europe, where the same money buys twice the experience? Or picture yourself in San Francisco. The Golden Gate Bridge glows in your imagination, but then you see news clips of half-empty downtown blocks and hear friends whisper about safety concerns. Do you take the risk for the view or choose a different West Coast city like Seattle or Portland that promises culture without the baggage? And then there's Miami. Maybe you've been longing for sun-soaked beaches and sizzling nightlife, but the fine print warns of seaweed blooms, curfews, and $100 parking fees. Would you swallow the extra cost just to be part of the Miami scene? Or spend that cash in Cancun where the sand is cleaner and the drinks cheaper? Here's where I want to hear from you. If you were planning a US vacation right now, which city would you still choose? New York, San Francisco, Miami, or none at all? Drop your answer in the comments. A for New York, B for San Francisco, C for Miami, D for skip them all. And if you've already visited one of these cities recently, share your experience. Was it worth the price? Did the reality match the marketing? Your stories are the heartbeat of this channel, and they'll help others decide where to spend their hard-earned dollars. New York, San Francisco, and Miami. 3 names that once guaranteed magic now carry warnings of empty streets, sky-high bills, and beaches buried in seaweed. The data paints a sobering picture. Hotel rates climbing past $400, dining and flights outpacing wages, and visitor numbers still trailing pre-pandemic highs. Layer in safety anxieties and climate shocks, and the shine begins to fade. But decline isn't destiny. Each city still has the bones of greatness, culture, history, architecture, energy that could be revived if leaders confront costs, safety, and environment head-on. The question is whether change will come soon enough to keep travelers from shifting their loyalty elsewhere. So here's my challenge to you. If you had to choose today, would you still spend your vacation in one of these cities? Or would you take your dollars to a new destination? Tell me below, because your perspective is the pulse of this debate. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more deep dives into the hidden forces shaping America's economy, real estate, and travel. Hit the like button if you found this eye-opening, and share it with someone planning a trip. Together, let's keep uncovering the real story behind the headlines.